Thanks, Rebecca. That was beautiful. So every morning I get an email from Morning Brew. Maybe some of you get Morning Brew. It's a business news. It's really cleverly written. And this week there was one, and it talked about the bombogenesis that is coming. Never heard that word, bombogenesis. Anybody heard bombogenesis? Well, bombogenesis describes when a storm undergoes a sudden drop in atmospheric pressure, and it transforms it into a bomb cyclone. And I thought, well, that's what happens in this lifetime a lot too, doesn't it? With our fears and our reactivity. We can go through this bombogenesis when we just react out of fear, and where things can just erupt and explode. The past couple of years, parts of society, we've seen this happening. We've seen this lowering of consciousness levels, of living in fear, of reacting to the news, reacting to things we have no control over often, and it's so easy to just erupt and be a cyclone and stir up all kinds of storms in our lives. Which is good it's good that we have practices to help us with this. And the season for nonviolence is a great 64-day practice. Reminders to choose differently, to look at our thoughts, look at where we are in consciousness, where we are in our emotions, where are we in our relationships, where are we in our own thoughts of ourselves, and practice nonviolence, practice peace. We need to stay aware of how our choices affect ourselves and affect each other. Someone who did a great job of this was Kim Dae-jung. He was a South Korean president from 1998 to 2003. After losing 3 times before that, as he ran for president of South Korea. Not only that, he had many death threats. He was kidnapped, he was beaten, he was exiled, he was imprisoned. He had several house arrests. At one time, while he was in exile in Japan in 1973, he was kidnapped from his hotel room, taken to a ship, chained to some weights, blindfolded, they put a cloth in his mouth so he couldn't speak, and he was about to be thrown overboard to drown. The U.S. ambassadors at Seoul, Philip Habib at that time, saved him in the nick of time, and a plane was close by and stopped it. Kim Dae-jung associates this saving of his life at this time to his belief in God, to his love of spirit, to his prayers that he said in those moments, thinking it might have been the end of his human life. He went on to live his life, to do so much good for human rights, for democracy, became the president of South Korea after losing 3 other times, and was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in the year 2000 for his work in democracy and human rights. And he says that in spite of his fears, he chose to love God. He had this love for God, love for his people, love for democracy, and love for what was right. His was the first transfer of power in South Korea that was peaceful. He's known as the Nelson Mandela of Asia. He chose love over fear time and time again in his life and made a big difference. Someone else who made a big difference in the world was a Zen master Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. He made his transition last week, and at the age of 95, He was exiled from his native Vietnam for almost 4 decades. He was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 1997 by, that's not the right year. I think it was 1967 by Martin Luther King Jr. They didn't award a Nobel Peace Prize that year, so he never received it. But he says this about nonviolence. The essence of nonviolence is love. Out of love and the willingness to act selflessly, strategies, tactics, and techniques for a nonviolent struggle arise naturally. Nonviolence is not a dogma, it is a process. It is a process. And it's a choice over and over and over. We need to stay awake to being the observer. We're not our emotions, but we can observe our emotions. I was watching an interview that Oprah did with Thich Nhat Hanh some years ago, and in it he talks about how presence, just being present for someone, is the first act of love. It is so important for people to know that we are present for them, or to be present for ourselves. And in it, he says, in this interview, he says, you can use this mantra, darling, I'm here for you. Darling, I'm here for you. And the response can be, darling, I know you are here. Now, maybe it's not darling for you. Maybe it's babe, I'm here for you. Honey, I'm here for you. Friend, I'm here for you. I know you are here. To be present for someone else, not to try to change them, just to be present and to listen. It's really challenging in our reactivity. It's really challenging when we are fearful to be this presence. I know in my own life, I catch myself being in my own bombogenesis. And when I'm in this bombogenesis and I'm sinking into my fears and my reactivity, there's a storm going on. My poor husband. Sometimes those storms can be pretty horrific. I project some kind of horrific future outcome instead of staying present. Staying present. The last time you said yes, was it out of fear or out of love? The last time you said no, was it out of fear or out of love? Can you guess our theme for this year? It's choose love over fear. Choose love over fear. The choices we make in each present moment, each moment, can either be love or fear. It's an invitation for us this year to ask the question, what would love do? In any moment when we can stay awake enough, what would love do? Choose fear over love. We're going to show a short video that is a bunch of segments of Jim Carrey's graduation speech he gave at Maharishi University. He's speaking to college graduates, but his words are timeless. They're for all of us. If you still have breath, you still have opportunities to choose love over fear in each precious moment of life. Let's watch the video.
You can spend your whole life imagining ghosts, worrying about the pathway to the future, but all there will ever be is what's happening here, and the decisions we make in this moment, which are based in either love or fear. So many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach and ridiculous to expect, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. I'm saying I'm the proof that you can ask the universe for it. Please. I can tell you from experience, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love. That peace that we're after lies somewhere beyond personality. Your need for acceptance can make you invisible in this world. Don't let anything stand in the way of the light that shines through this form. Risk being seen in all of your glory. As far as I can tell, it's just about letting the universe know what you want and working toward it while letting go of how it comes to pass. And when I say life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, I really don't know if that's true. I'm just making a conscious choice to perceive challenges as something beneficial so that I can deal with them in the most productive way. You'll come up with your own style. That's part of the fun. Like many of you, I was concerned about going out into the world and doing something bigger than myself, until someone smarter than myself made me realize that there is nothing bigger than myself. You are ready and able to do beautiful things in this world. And after you walk through those doors today, you will only ever have two choices: love or fear. Choose love, and don't ever let fear turn you against your playful heart. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dad. I'm so honored. Thank you.
Jim's message is so inspiring and captures so much of what we teach here at Columbine. But his overall message to those graduates to follow what you love, or as Sue put it in her part, to say yes to what you love, can be much more challenging than that sounds. I know when I graduated from college, if you had said, Scott, do what you love, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what I love. I might have had an answer for you, but it really wasn't coming from my heart. It was more the dogma of my ego, the dogma of that patterned response to life that so many of us come out of our upbringing with. The heart is an amazing organ, and the heart center is the center of so many diverse qualities in us. Love has its own power and strength, but the heart center is also the center of courage, the center of strength, the center of compassion. But it's also where we as human beings experience vulnerability. And we are objectively vulnerable. And vulnerability gets our attention. And one of the challenges, one of the things we teach is that each of us is a unique expression of spirit. And that certainly has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks, especially when we're a kid and we are wanting to fit in and we're wanting to be loved. Our uniqueness is not always met so positively. And not wanting to feel vulnerable. We tend to put away our desires. We become afraid of our heart. You see, the heart is also that spontaneity in us. And it brings forth the guidance, which is no respecter of human beings. Our guidance is about claiming our potential, not fitting in, not being acceptable. And so for many of us, we've developed layers and layers of defense over our heart. Keeps it from being able to express so beautifully. And in those times when we were met negatively, then our judge gets on us and it tells us and leaves us with the feeling that we're deficient, that there's something wrong with us, that we need to hide who we are. And so we become accountants. I know I did. And so this year, as with any theme that we pick, there's an opportunity to take a deep dive into it. Where are the areas that you have come to believe that you are anything less than magnificent? Where you've come to believe that you need to somehow hide? What is your relationship with vulnerability? Have you learned that it's safe to be vulnerable? Do you feel that the world around you is a safe place? The quote that was given today in this practice for a season for nonviolence says, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear." And today, based on what I'm saying, I would say it's the discernment that something else is more important than fear. Because you see, part of our process of really getting down and seeing, why am I feeling vulnerable? What's going on here? Is the process of becoming less attached to those messages that we've been given about ourselves and being able to fly from a higher viewpoint. To say to the part of ourselves that doesn't want to be vulnerable, "Darling, I'm here with you. We're not a child anymore. And the universe loves us." Stuart and I were watching a movie last night called Angelina. And in the movie, one of the characters said, "If your dreams don't scare you, then they're not big enough dreams." And let's talk a little bit about fear. Fear gets such a bad rap. You know, in the unity that I grew up with, we were told to deny fear. Deny anything that brought up fear in us, deny its hold on us. What are we doing? We're jumping over the fear. But you know, most of us wouldn't be here if we didn't have the quality of fear. Because fear is that wake-up call. Hey, there's a potential danger here. Pay attention. It's actually part of our DNA. It's actually, part of our cellular makeup. The challenge with fear is it's a little outdated, You know, it's not kept up to speed with the evolution of humankind. We're not at the kind of risk for survival that cavemen, for example, were. We have a lot more safety in our lives. We're safe in most cases. And yet it's easy, right, to become identified with our fear, to trust our fear more than we trust God. It's why the people like Thich Nhat Hanh stand out so much for us as bright lights, because they put their faith in God. Their faith in the fact that the universe is a good universe that loves us. And even as Jim Carrey said, when I experience struggle, it's an invitation for me to develop capacity, to grow beyond what I thought I was. So fear comes out of our instinctual need to survive, our survival instinct, if you will. And again, the opportunity with fear is to take that deep dive. Why am I uniquely afraid of this situation or afraid to take this risk? You see, it's the dance between vulnerability and fear that has really allowed us to put so many layers of defense over our heart. And by the way, those layers of defense are not up all the time. They're up depending on the situation. So all of us can point to places in our lives where our heart feels open, where we feel in the flow, where we're spontaneous, where we're loving whatever it is that we're engaged with, whether it is a person or a thing, our careers. But my experience is that I continue to find layers of defense and layers of fear around my heart, that it is a lifelong practice. And as I open to that process of bringing awareness to what it is that's going on with me, my life just becomes richer, more spontaneous, more loving, more satisfying. And so the invitation this year is to not only make choices towards love, but to take the deep dive so that you may experience a quality of life that you've not experienced yet before. To be freed. To be. And to be the unique expression that you are. It seems that we could say, choose love over fear. And open to a life like you've never imagined. And so it is.